Okay, guys, we're live and recording now. So, welcome to the IRK UAS Challenge 2020 Pre CDR Webinar. And we're going to talk you through the competition, and there will be a few presenters from the judges and officials to take you through the competition. So, here's just an overview of the agenda. So, we're going to start talking about the PDR, and the judges are going to give a bit of feedback on how teams have been doing. And then next, we'll have a chat about the CDR requirements and give you guys an opportunity to ask a few questions both online and in the room. And then we're going to have a presentation from some past team members from Queen's Flight Tank, detailing their experience from last year and how they went about developing their aircraft. Then I think we're going to have a quick coffee break and come back and talk about the FFR requirements and the scrutineer requirements for a head scrutineer. And then we're going to talk about the overview of the demonstration event, and again have a bit of time for questions and answers. And then we're going to end up on the awards and STEM engagement activities of the competition. Next slide, please. Okay, so for this judging next aspect of the competition, I'm going to hand you over to our head judge, Lambert.
Well, I'd say good day, really, because I guess people are in all sorts of time zones with a bit of luck listening to this. So, yes, where we've got to in the competition now is you've done the concept paper and we've given you feedback on that. And that was great. And you all delivered your concept papers on time, I think. Excellent. PDR, delivered them. We've been through the judging process. We had our meeting yesterday. The judges to those. I will only be able to give you some sort of generic feedback today, but I hope to get your individual feedback, comments on your PDR papers within the next week or so. That's the aim. And then going forward, you've got the CDR coming up in the middle of March, and then the FRR of the demonstration event. Just to remind you a bit about where all this sits in the overall competition, is that the concept papers were 20 points. We gave you some points this year just to encourage you to actually go and complete a paper. PDRs were 50 points. And then going on, you can see how you come up with that. Right, so what I get it, so on the PDR thing, I'll just talk a bit about the range of scores that you see, talk a bit about document, and then go through the sort of things we were expecting to see in the sections. Some of you did, a lot of you did extremely well. I mean, we're very encouraged by what we've seen with the PDR. Year on year, people are getting better and better at doing. And then a few pointers about adherence to the rules, just to make sure there is no misunderstanding about the issues on the rules. Thank you. Right, so the range of scores we've got this year, remember this is out of 50 points, and these are preliminary scores. And the scores for these documents will remain preliminary until the demonstration event, until we've seen what you've actually delivered, and confirm these scores. But they range from 19 to 46 of the teams, with a median score of 32 this time. However, it's a bit of a but, is 3 teams were slightly late in delivering their PDRs, and as you will have seen clearly in the rules this year, we've introduced penalties for late delivery. Now, there are 2 reasons. One is, in the real world, I mean, if you're bidding into a contract or a research grant or anything like that, if you're 1 minute late on the time, chop, you just won't get read at all. And punctuality is absolute essential in industry for these things. And so, you know, we're being very generous in just giving you some points penalties for being late. But the other reason is the team of judges that I've got doing this are all senior, busy working engineers in the industry. We don't have long to do it. They're devoting a whole load of their own time to doing this judging, and so it's unfair on them if we can't get the documents to them to see as well. So apologies in one respect, but the three teams will end up losing some points simply because they're late. So do try to please be on time. But say overall, I mean, the standard of the documents was very encouraging this year. I keep trying to press my laptop. The next slide, please. But I think one of the things that is actually a little bit irritating is and we've lost a bit of this slide, but is about document compliance. Is 2/3 of you, literally 24 of the 36 teams, failed in one respect or another to follow the very standard rules about how we want the document presented. And it might seem annoying doing this sort of thing, but it's all there for a purpose. And so the cover page in particular, and an awful lot of you, we do ask that the compiler and the academic supervisor, or their equivalent, signs off the document. Again, this is a process you'll have to go through in industry, and any document you produce has to be signed off in that way. And a lot of you fail to get either or both of those signatures. We don't want pages we didn't ask for. I know it may be nice putting in context pages, lists of abbreviations, and all the rest of it. Unfortunately, we've not asked for them, and please don't add pages we don't want. Don't add appendices that we haven't asked for, and things like that, because they won't get read, they're just an irritation to do it. Do abide by the page count, because it's there for a purpose. I mean, it's a huge amount of stuff to read. It's going through all of these documents, just as you'll have found writing them. And so you must stay within the page count, but do please make it legible. There were quite a number which had figures or charts. Yes, you got within the page count, but they're completely useless, waste of space, because we couldn't read them. And so think about it if you were reading this document, if you were going to decide how many points to give this, or whether you were going to offer that organisation a contract. And so provide data in a form that is going to be helpful. And these documents have got to be standalone. Don't assume that we're going to go back and reread your concept paper just because we couldn't remember what your aircraft looked like and you haven't bothered to give us a picture this time around. And so got to be standalone, they've got to be legible. And we ask you to start a new section, each section on a new page. Again, a lot of you failed to do that. Again, it's for a purpose, so that we can split the document up if necessary for different specialist judges to look at things. And again, please don't stick sideways. I mean, quite a number of you put Gantt charts in sideways, and it's quite hard work trying to read a Gantt chart sideways, as most of the people that are doing this will be doing this on their laptop on the train or something. And so, think about the poor person that's trying to read this stuff, and do proofread what you're doing. I mean, there was some obvious errors in documents too, because you haven't bothered to read through them. But that's enough of the ranting about it. But I mean, it's these simple things, because as you go through life, if you're presenting stuff to it, it makes a big difference in people think, this looks attractive, yes, I can understand this is great. But the opposite, unfortunately, has a very negative effect on people. It's hard work to struggle through, and it's easier to just stop aside and go to the next one. Right. What the sort of thing we were hoping to see in here on project management is a plan going from the start to the end of the project, not just a little bit of a section of it. This is a project plan. where your progress is, how far you've got, maybe in your percentage completion of activities, which bits you're ahead of, which bit you're behind. So and this is to help you to think of how am I doing, where do I need to put resource or effort into to sort this out. Do as was said this morning, testing time. And you heard a lot this morning. I mean, of the process that industry does in designing really complex and important things like wings, as we heard this morning, and how much effort goes into testing. Testing tells you a hell of a lot. So don't leave it to the last minute, because you will learn things. And it is very hard, and particularly if you're in teams that not work closely together, the integration of this, it's what somebody's done here, the impact over here, terribly obvious until you start testing something. So do give time for testing. Concentrate on your major risks, and that's why we ask you to do risk assessments. It does help you understand where you need to put resource and effort into. And we ask you to give some mitigations to those risks and do something about them. Don't just write them down as a paper exercise. It's actually do. On the requirements review, I mean, it's all about capturing requirements, and so each time you've got all these requirements down. Keep checking: am I still meeting these requirements? What action are you taking to make sure you're addressing how you will prove compliance that you have done it? On performance calculations, I mean, again, depending on the type of aircraft you're offering will depend on the emphasis might lay, but one would expect to see some aerodynamics, some structural, some performance, some weight and balance type calculations. And an awful lot of you actually did no structural calculations at all, or if you had done, you didn't show them to us. Now, I know we only gave you 2 pages, which was a pretty mean allocation, but even if it was just the sentence, we've done them and this was the result, but not space to show it, but at least give us a little bit of confidence that you did realise that you might need to do some structural calculations. On safety, again, it's quite a good idea to sort of score yours, to give it some ratings, so you know which are the really important issues. I mean, you all did forms and followed largely what we asked. I mean, 1 or 2 of you made your own classification things up. But again, it's often best to do what the customer suggests. They may have done it for a reason. They might feel more comfortable seeing fed back something that they'd asked you to do, rather than you coming up with something that different, if you see what I mean. And on safety, I mean, a lot of you just concentrated on either flight safety or the operating safety of the thing, but I mean, it's the whole program we're interested in safety. In your manufacturing the thing, testing it, you're flying it. Now, it may be that all your higher safety risks were just flight safety ones, but it's slightly unlikely, really, as possibly in manufacturing is the most dangerous bit you'll be doing as part of the project. Design description, again, we're looking to try and understand in a self-contained way what you designed. We did ask for a 3-view drawing, scale drawing. Some of you gave us unscaled drawings, a lot of you gave us undimensioned drawings. It's very hard, again, to assess your object if you don't give us a decent drawing that we can see with measurements on it and scales. And also, very few of you, relatively few, did systems architecture drawings. I mean, this is quite a complex systems problem, so it's important to include that. You could talk about any innovative features. The test plan, again, a lot of you just either did something on flight testing, or some of you did nothing on flight testing at all. But again, one would expect to see in the test plan subsystem, system, and flight testing. System, ground testing, and flight testing spelled out. And on the cost budget, now I agree we've not been terribly helpful to you here. I mean, we talk about COTS on one page, and then we talk about bought out, I think, on another page. I mean, it's sort of convention in the industry. COTS, commercial off the shelf, is a manufactured product, yes, that you've bought in commercially. So it's things like a motor, a battery, things like that, an autopilot are COTS. And we've given you a sort of guideline maximum price of the on-aircraft COTS of £1,000. And so we'd like to see those items listed and fully costed. I mean, it's useful also to other bought out stuff that you have got as additionally, so you can see the total cost of your aircraft, and really you probably ought to have spare parts and things included in that as well. If any of you are having any assembly done outside, that is a bought out cost as well, if you're having to pay someone to assemble something for you. So that should be included in the costing. And I think it's a lesson learned for our future next year's rules, is we've got to be clearer to you what it is that we're looking for. But bear in mind for the CDR. So just a few quick points on issues that I think came up in the rules. And most of you seem to have understood the rules properly, but just for the benefit of the doubt, the minimum aid package that you must fly is a first aid kit, which weighs approximately 500 grams, and at least one flour bag, and of course the smallest flour bag you can have is a 500 gram flour bag. So that's the minimum aid. It is not just a first aid kit, it has to include a flour bag as well. There is no maximum, other than the fact that you can't have a maximum takeoff mass of more than 6.9 kilograms. So if you can build your thing for a kilogram, you can carry 5 kilograms of aid package if you can. And so, because some of you, I think, seem to read that 3 kilograms is just an illustration, as it were, in the rules of combination. And you can, the flour bags can be in any combination that you like in 500 gram and 1 kilogram ones. By the CDR, we would be quite interested in knowing what it is you're planning to carry. Nothing else, Christina's got to go out and buy the flour bags, and we don't want to be either short or too many to dispose of later. There's only so many cakes you can bake afterwards. The flight termination system, again, I mean, we've had problems over the years, but I think most of you are getting it now. But the thing is, when it's activated, or the various reasons it does activate, you just must kill the engines. You can't throttle them back to 25% or anything. This is not about soft landing this. This is kill the thing, it's coming down, because that's the safe thing to do at that site. Get it down as soon as possible, so it's away from any people. And you know, it can be activated by the flight safety officer on your controller. Hit the kill switch, it goes, or your loss of uplink or downlink, or a geofence breach. And you might want to think about that. The geofence is probably more important at this new site that we're going to be at, because if you don't, it could fly off over some farmer's field miles away and you'll never get it back. So make sure that that's done. Communications equipment, just a point, and it's more for non-UK purchases of radio equipment. The CE marking is important, and you must have the CE marking, but that in itself is not sufficient to guarantee that it is legal to use in the UK. You have to have that, but the UK also has some limits on the transmission power of radio equipment. And so the 2.4 gigahertz limit it has to be less than 100 milliwatts, for instance. Now, a lot of these things are sold with a CE marking because they are legal in other bits of Europe that can transmit at more than 100 milliwatts. Most of them, I understand, you can throttle back, as it were, in the software, the system. Please make sure that you do adhere to the transmission power limits of the comms equipment. Now, batteries, there is no voltage limit or current limit for that matter, capacity limit on the batteries. However, as one team has pointed out to us, in our rules, we've got an inconsistency. It says that at the front of the book, but in the appendix, it points out that this power logger is limited to 60 volts continuous and a certain current continuously, or it's 80 volts. I can't remember what the number is. Now, I don't think the voltage is an issue because none of you are anywhere near the voltage limit of this, but the current might be. Now, what you can do is carry more than one power logger, so is to split the load. If your continuous current rating or your peak current rating is going to be above the limit of the power logger, or you can opt not to do an efficiency measurement if you prefer. You don't have to do it, but if you don't carry the power logger, we will deduct the mass, albeit it's only 20 grams or something, of the power logger from your allowable maximum takeoff mass. Well, ask questions later if that's clear. Michael, over yeah. Right. So, oh no, I'm doing it on my computer again. Right, so now on to the CDR. We can do some questions at the end, come back on anything on the PDR, but that's history now. You can't change what you've written. The CDR, well, as you'll have heard this morning, is the process that industry follows in designing, developing an aircraft. And so you get to a point of doing critical design review that says, now design is frozen, ready, I can go and build it. Now, we fully appreciate that the timing when we're asking you to deliver these reports is probably way out of kilter with what you're actually doing. And most of you, by March, when we're looking at these, are well past that stage. I mean, what we're looking for is a report of what you did at your CDRs. And so, but the timing, as I said, is great. So what we're looking for on the CDR is, again, a series of sections, and just, please bear with us. The cover page doesn't count in the page count, and please do it the way it is, because, when you've got 36 of these things to look at, having that information on the cover, when you're trying to remember, well, what was it that so-and-so said, is you can just go to that. Particularly the picture of the aircraft is extremely useful to remind you which one you're looking at. And the signing off is not just signatures, let's do an electronic signature and copy and paste it. It's that the person who compiled it, actually, yes, they've written it, they've read it again, they've converted it to a PDF, and please make sure one team still sent us in a Word document. They must be in PDF format, and please check conversion. Look again after you've converted it, because unfortunately, not all Word documents transfer perfectly to PDFs. You sometimes need to do a little bit of a tweak. So that's the cover page. The summary page also is one page, and that's not, that is counted the page count. We don't give you any point score for that. But again, it's just to summarize where you're at, and so please do that. And then we go on to the meaty pages on the various things, and I think the next slide I go into a bit more detail. Up one, please. Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh well, I just repeated that first bit. On the summary page, so what is important is changes from your PDR. So is significant design changes from your PDR. And you'll continue this. I mean, it becomes really important too when you submit your FRR that it's any changes from your CDR, because we do need to be able to see that. So the ones that are collecting points, the design review, quite a long section, 4 pages, and a page which is a detailed dimension drawing, please. And so there, we split it into airframe and systems, and this is no industry standard split. It's just so that they get about the right sort of size. Is that in the airframe bit, got aerodynamic structures and the propulsion system, just to say that to balance it out. So, the assumptions you made in arriving at that, and any calculations to support it, and then we want to make sure that you've again thought back about the requirements, and so it's confirming that you're addressing all the requirements of the competition. And if for any reason you're deviating from that, and there may be possibly some reasons, you must explain in detail why you think you're justified in doing it. We will tell you afterwards if we don't think you're justified in doing it, but you do that. And then the systems are the other bits, basically the control system, the communication system, and the age package carriage release, and how you're going to implement your autonomous features. Again, the same stuff, but please, again, a page of a systems architect drawing as detailed as possible. Right, the next, please. Right. So then we go on to the safety case. And so, as we've banged on over the years, safety and aerospace are very twinned items. And so we're looking on 2 pages on your approach to safety. So this is just taking it on further in more detail in the PDR. And we want to see this table of hazards really scored. So we give you an example the sort of where is it? This little coloured diagram, which again is, various forms of this, but used not only in the aerospace industries, but in many industries, so that helps you to concentrate on the things that are really important. You want to get to a post-mitigation state where, you have reasonable control of this, or if there is something that's still a significant risk, again, explain why it is and how it is you're going to try and limit its impact. But remember, it's not just about the flight operation side. That's clearly important, but it's all aspects of risk. Then the cost breakdown. Just a page on this. Probably just a simple table, as it were, but just bear in mind what I've said before, and apologies that we could have been clearer in the rules on this, that the cost bits, separate that out as a table cost. Remember that the £1,000 is not a limit. If you spend £1,001, doesn't mean say you're out of competition. It's a sensible guidance, as it were. If you can do it for a lot less, fantastic. If you can do it, if it's going to cost a lot more, when you come to the Dragon's Den presentation, you're going to have to convince the judges there that you've got a decent business case that you've spent £2,500 on costs, because you're going to sell 20 times more aircraft, because it's going to be that good as a result of it. So just think about that aspect of it. But I say it's useful to have other bought out costs. If you've got sponsors who are providing you with a free autopilot or something, make a note of it. Really put in the indicative cost of the item, but that's all credit to you if you've got people who are giving you stuff or all the rest of it. That's a credit to you for having, and again, it's something you probably want to get across at the Dragon's Den presentation as well. manufacturing description, we're giving you a fair bit, 3 pages to do that, and tell us the processes that you use, some of the challenges that you have, what sort of construction techniques you're using. Safety is quite a big issue in manufacturing often, and some of the materials you might be using or tools you might be using might be dangerous. So just talk about how you make sure it's safe, and any environmental issues, whether hazards from materials you're using or any precautions you've got to take because of materials or tools you're using, and any special equipment that you're using for manufacturing. Some of you are using composites, some of you are using layer manufacturing, things like that. Just tell us what it is that you've used in the process. And then on to support. Now, clearly you're not doing long-term support. It's coming up with your prototype fly at this demonstration event. But we just ask you for a page to think about, well, not only looking after it at the demonstration event, but maybe talking about the ongoing support of your vehicle as well. And then finally, the qualification test plan. Again, this is taking further the testing that you're going to do, that how you can be sure that your design has been effective. And again, probably, certainly use one page of that at least as a table. You may want to just tabulate the whole thing of explaining it. So that is. So if we go on to the next thing, sort of, I suppose, summary of issues around the CDR. Remember, this is worth quite a lot of points. This is 100 of the 600 total points. So it's worth putting some effort into this because, it could well influence the overall champion competition. This. Do take a note of the feedback that we give you from the PDR. And to some extent, it might be as well to acknowledge if we have made some points, even if you don't, for whatever reason, implement them. But maybe acknowledging and explaining why, well, maybe even disagree with us, or couldn't do what we suggest. It's probably worth doing that. But hopefully, if we do make a suggestion, think it's a good one, you actually take it on board. But you absolutely must address any corrective actions to be given. And corrective actions are things that will end up with either an unsafe or a non-compliant vehicle at the end, which would ultimately prevent you from flying the day. And you must, if you got any of those, we'll be checking. You must refer to them in your CDR and specifically how you have affected the correction. Again, I wish on about this, but just please adhere to the format. It's not hard to do. It's not an awful lot we're asking for, but it will pay dividends because we won't get quite so annoyed with it. And particularly make sure that tables and charts, let's look at them again. And most of the judges will be doing this on a simple ordinary laptop, so it's got to be readable on that, not blown up to this sort of size to try and decipher what's written. And we can only give you points for what you tell us. And so don't assume, again, we'll have gone back and reread your PDR. So it's got to be a reasonably coherent standalone document. You only got to repeat all the stuff you said in the PDR, but make sure that someone can read this document and say, oh yes, now I know what you're doing, what your intentions, what your design's about. And if anything's unclear, do look at the FAQs on the website, or do send Christina an email. Many of you do that. Get hundreds of them. So you spend all my time answering these emails. But yes, do ask. Don't just make an assumption that might turn out to be incorrect in the end. And then finally, I just got. Oh yes, different to my picture. A few sort of think abouts. Now this is just a totally random list, as it were, but I mean it's a really good opportunity to look back at these requirements, make sure we go through rigorously. And why we asked you originally in the concept stage and certainly in the PDR to have a structured list of requirements is so that you can keep going back and checking. Yes, I've done that. No, I haven't forgotten that. Yes, the flight termination system will do what it's asked to do. As I said, make sure about this communication regulation side. Just double check that you're going to be compliant with that. Double check about the flight termination system. This will be tested on the ground before you allow it to fly. So if it doesn't do what we asked it to do, you're going nowhere because that's not safe. Think about aid package carried release. That's part of the core program. Therefore, it is important that it does release. It does work because, and in past competitions we have a lot of quite decent flying. But a lot of teams have had problems with their aid package release, and do remember that you've got to be able to recover this bag of flour without damaging it, without any special tools, and whatever you've covered in it has got to be biodegradable. So wrapping the whole lot up in duct tape is not compliant. Remember also that this competition this time requires you to arrive with your aircraft in its box and in front of the scrutineers with their stopwatches out. You've got to get this out the box, got to put it all together in whatever form it is, and pass whatever tests that are required of it. Now, if a Formula One team can change all four wheels in less than 3 seconds, that's the sort of thing you're aiming for. Remember also that is finding it after it's crashed. I mean, one hopes that you're not, but as we've seen in past years, not all of them quite manage it all the way around the course every time. I think here there are probably quite a lot of long grass around, so having some audio sounding thing and certainly some bright surfaces and things is essential if you're ever going to find it again in the big field. Think about weather protection in that we can't guarantee the weather, even though it's supposed to be in the summertime, and we're not in Wales anymore, so it ought to be better in Middle England, but who knows? And the other thing is being able to quickly change your batteries or anything else in the aircraft. Just think about its supportability in that respect, or if you're going to refuel it, because again, some of you are doing a circuit, collecting some more aid package, going around again, or between the two, the core mission and the optional mission. And so just think about how easy and straightforward it is to do that. Oh yes, what struck me when at the presentation this morning and talking about co-location teams and things like that is, I mean, particularly for the Open University, they're not very co-located at all. But I mean, even for the rest of you, no doubt, wandering around, I suspect don't do all of this all sat in the same room at the same time. Do think about the way your configuration control of your vehicle, because somebody's having a bright idea and saying, "Oh, I'll do that," might not realise the implications and the consequence on other team members. So this communication between team members is really, really important. And again, one of the reasons why you test these things, the best will in the world, you will have done something else will have done. You haven't realised the interaction between them. And so when you come to test it, you find the wing falls off or something because someone has changed that bolt or whatever for what seemed like a good reason. So you remember that. Right. So on to Q&A. Well, yeah, so very good question that really. And I guess is just looking forward to the following year. We're thinking about the process and trying to make it slightly more sense in the timing of the academic year. I guess what we were trying to do with the CDR was get a report of your review, which may have happened somewhat earlier. But in reality, you don't want to just tell us rubbish of the past that you now know was not right. So, I think it's a contemporary view, but we're not trying to create a whole lot of more work. Really, it's supposed to be a report of your actual CDR when it is. But if you're continuously updating things, do tell us as updated information as possible.
I think, Lambert, your comment about post-mitigation comes in there.
Yes.
You may have initiated mitigation, but report that.
Yeah.
Say what that's
going to yeah, I suppose it's probably a bit of terminology about throttling back the engines. I suppose in throttling back one means really one's killing it. One doesn't want any thrust. It's effectively reducing the thrust to zero, because what we want this thing to do is come down as quickly as possible, because that's the safest place. And as we made the point before, most of your autopilots will have built in probably a come home feature, because if you're out in your local park, you shouldn't be, but if you were out in your local park flying your drone, as it were, you don't actually want it to go straight down because it might land on the person walking their dog over there. You actually want to come back to you. It doesn't matter if it hits you, but that's the safest place to do. In our case, where we know there's nobody walking a dog up in the field, the safest thing is just to come literally straight down, because we know that's safe. Coming back to us, there's not only you, but there's other judges and people around, and so you're putting more people at risk. And so, as a safety thing, just thinking about safety in whatever you're doing it's about the environment in which you're operating. You want to think and sort out the right thing. And so, again, to some extent, when you're testing out your drone, as it were, depending on where you're testing it out, you've got to think about the environment in which you're testing. Is what is the safest operating environment for the place where you're testing? And that might not be the same as what we're requiring for Buckminster.
So you won't be not being explicit, made a phrase of that. You wouldn't say you're not about to zero.
Well, no, I think you've got to make it clear that you have killed the thrust of this of any engines you've got. Yes. Yeah, I think. Yeah, it's. Yeah, well, maybe I think we've got to make clear in the rules. Yes, I think it's I suppose. Yeah.
You will not pass the flight termination system check at scrutineering if there's any power to the rotors.
I just going to kill specific setup. But it's not that.
But you will need to demonstrate that.
Yeah. Well, you raised a good point, and just like I berated you all for checking your work and things, I'm embarrassed to see that in some of the feedback forms that I've given you, there's some bloody mistakes that I've made in typos in it, and so yeah, we're not all perfect.
We
Being recorded.
There's an online question asking for when feedback for PDR will be available.
When the PDR feedback will be, well, it's as soon as I can finish writing it. And so I hope, certainly, I very much hope to get it out by the end of next week. Yes, I mean, yes, you can certainly do that. Remember that we'll only have a certain number of power loggers, and so they've got to be easily removable so that immediately after your flight, we can download them and pass them on to the next team. I'd have to say we've not tried this before, this power logging.
It's our application of innovation this year. It's not specified. It is to be able to identify those critical parts on the ground. So we don't define that as a colour, but it's fundamentally Davo would be good. But a bright green might not be as ideal as a bright yellow or a bright red. But equally, if you're going to be operating in a very arid Australian outback burnt location, bright green might be quite good. So yeah, something visible and bright. Just you have considered that and adopted it, but it's your terms to interpret.
Well, it's a bit like the flight termination system. I mean, it's where you're doing your own weaving.
Bear in mind that a flight data recorder black box is yellow or orange.
Well, another good question. One of the reasons why I'm a little bit wary about it. I mean, strictly, you really need, because we're trying to see the efficiency of your aircraft. Any consumption of fuel or electricity, we need.
The other thing I think is justifying your argument for what you do.
Yes.
So if in a way you are not compliant, you may be generating what is technically called an alternative acceptable means of compliance. It's not exactly what is stated in the front, but you're providing an alternative way that you can justify. That in real life, the approving authority would say, like the argument of that's fine. That you can justify that case, not acceptable alternative means of compliance, then, and that's the way you want to go.
Yeah.
But I think you are compliant in any case with the rest of the rules.
Yeah.
We don't state that the number of batches will say that.
So the next part is Learn to Win presentation by Aaron and Ryan from QUB Titanic. If you just be patient with us for a few minutes online while we swap over to their presentation. So guys, you want to just give a introduction, but you're going to have to speak up a little bit because there's no microphone at the minute.
Yes, I'm Aaron Pastor. This is Ryan Bell. We're from Titanic. I'll be named after the book right here. We're both pioneers aerospace engineers. This is just up the road. The next slide there, please. It's just going to be a brief overview of our experience on practical, not much we did here. So just a brief overview of our structure. We have 19 members. We're all third-year aerospace engineers. So we have electrical software. So the way we worked our team was leader Ryan, and everyone else took on this responsibility. So, for example, I had avionics, other people had structures, manufacturing, stability, things like that. But that didn't mean that I went away for 6 months, signed it all, back, and we just shut it all together. It meant that I was in charge, so if I kind of made a decision, that's what we went with. But every week we had a team meeting just to make sure that everyone was actually doing what they said they were doing, and made sure that it was actually looking the right to do. So we just made sure to work as a team and everyone helped each other out so that someone off for a week. We didn't do time. So elephant in the room. I think this presentation is called Learning How to Win. We didn't win, it's more learning how to be third. So yeah, we came third. We came third in scrutineering as well. And we did win a scrutineer prize. We were one of the main teams to come up with a transport box. So I think the main reason we just have to make a transport box this year is we always wrap. Yeah, we think not too bad for it. Yeah, that's most of it there. So what We were all coming to this based on how almost like system work. I don't know what you picked up. So if you want to the information on forums, we were getting really a little bit talk about there's no actual instruction manual. So I remember me and Ryan sitting there in a room with Pixel, all this stuff that we were supposed to buy, trying to plug it all in together. None of the connections fitted, none of it worked. So I was a bit surprised. Once all the wires changed, got everything fit together finally, we thought, right, we'll plug this in, put it in the bin, it'll work. So put a lot of time into that. What we did, we bought like a test bed, a bush wheel aircraft called hobby thing. Basically just put our system into that so that we could test it, and if we crash, and sort of do it. And the same with scrimmage technicians. Like I said, we were all aerospace engineers, and there was no one who really had any background whatsoever. It was all just starting from scratch. We think that it worked in the end. We think that all the systems work. Like after we followed. But again, it just our lecturer always said just fly early, fly often, just get as much experience as you can. So that if you realize early your plane does work, then happy days. Other activities that also work. Timekeeping as well. So we've already done the CDR, do the CDR. We're quite lucky in the sense that we have to do CDRs for our course. They're going to set 2 weeks for the deadline for IMIT. Make sure you keep on ticking away, especially documentation. Keep building the week of the chapter order parts. We're waiting like 3 weeks for the code. We no headway whatsoever. So we're quite tight towards the end. Yeah.
Just on the highlights of the time I did. Like I said, we were a team of 9 aerospace engineers. We've done 2.5 years of just pure theory, building on your pure engineering skills. So getting the chance to do a semester of design and analysis and then a semester of build, that's getting some experience. Getting to see what you analysis you conducted in the first semester from the last 2 words, I think was definitely the biggest highlight module. It wasn't a thing. That was one of our biggest difficulties. It was something that as an engineer, it's easy for us to design structure, to design and don't ever analysis. It's hard for us to work on the system. And it's exactly competition. It was really good to see how we work on it. You get out there, there's plenty of socialites, you get out there. For there, just some top tips. The way sort of stuff by, and I think we do it quite well. Keep the design simple. There's so much stuff that you need to drop payload. Right? You need to make sure you have an aircraft that works in isolation by itself. Because you can't get an aircraft working with those extra capabilities. Be proactive and work. Don't leave your CDR the week before. Make sure you start early. Start chipping away at work. Like Aaron said, fly early, fly often. Once you get to the competition, it's not a trivial task. There's a lot of work has to go in just to make your aircraft as safe as possible. Have your plane ready before you're ready. Make sure that you're not turning up and having to build a plane. Next requirement for this year. December at that time. It was different from last year. Have some work to see. We hope we're going to be really clever and right. Sure, it's not going to rain. If it rains, I'm going to our tent. Just to summarize the overall experience, it's the soft skills and the hard skills. Obviously, you build on your engineering skills, you build on your teamwork, you build on your ability to make decisions as a team, make decisions, take responsibility for making decisions, and that sort of stuff that we didn't really get before. I think this module or this experience. Also, it's great fun to get out there. It's great fun building this thing and seeing that reward from it. So I think from us, what we sort of find is we want to make an experience. So buy in. Thanks very much for listening. Any questions?
No,
Go
no.
on, as chief scrutineer. So how did you find scrutineering? What did you find the challenge? While you're there, then your coffin, your carrying case. How much effort was that to construct? It was really quite a size, but it was well manufactured.
One member of our team, and so the other I'll do this kind of job to do. She constructed for
Interesting. It's something I've pushed for a few years, but that was the tipping point to say, why don't we get it done? And if you go back 3, 4, 5 years, people were taking these out of diagonally fitted into bands. Yeah, so that was a key bit that people were arriving, but actually this thing's got to operate. And actually you need to have it protected and looked after, so you can do that. Yeah,
So just to give everybody online an overview, the next part of the presentation is about the flight readiness review and scrutineering. And this presentation will be taken by Rod Williams, who's the chief scrutineer for the challenge.
Welcome, good to see so many of you here. Rod Williams, President of Bristol, but I'm going to have to project my voice, so I'll let you know I'm ex-army. Yes, welcome. This is about the FRR and scrutineering. This is about where you're turning your theoretical design into a practical, safe, airworthy flying system. That's what we want to see. And obviously, it's the key couple of phases post CDR of pre-actually operationally flying this on the event itself. Two key stages, obviously, that we said: flight readiness review, which again is it's continuation stage, if you like, from your PDR CDR process, and it's bringing all of that information at the point at which you're ready to do the flight in before the second element of it, the pre-flight scrutineering. So critical for the FRR is a thing called Form 701. Now, this is aviation, it's about development. Aircraft documentation is vital, the power of the signature. What I want you to be aware of is certainly the team captains amongst you. You have a lot of signatures to get on documentation that I'll cover. Each stage, I need a signature of you. On the F701, there are signatures to be had. When it comes to the scrutineering, you will sign each stage, and then we as scrutineers will sign the next stage. And that signs you off through the process. Kind of the established first, second signature process that you get in aviation. So the first piece, the F701, it's a form in 3 sides as you go, and you should be able to find that on the system. Currently, it'll be in last year's format. We're going to have some tweaks to make, but fundamentally, these forms won't change a great deal. They're worth having a look at. And there's a blank one, and there's one on there, as I've done here with the blue areas, are the bits that you should be filling in. We'd like you to use the form, filling in the space provided in the form. We've had people who rejig their form, and we have all sorts of attachments. If you need to go over, just give us an attachment page, a Word document with a picture of it. But fundamentally, we want stuff that fits in the boxes on here. Again, a little bit of simplifying the marking, but it means we can be consistent in what we assess from each of the teams. There's currently 36. We need that consistency so it generates a bit of fairness. The 701 prompts you post your CDR reports and you're doing your flight testing to answer a few questions. Again, the team captains, it's worth all the team members knowing there are key ones to ask in here. Have you changed anything since your CDR? We covered that in the CDR report, but actually you may well have had crash and test flying What have you changed? Why have you changed it? Get some detail in there. What are those red actions out of your CDR that you have to address? What have we said? Your undercarriage, your flight termination system is not compliant. What have you done about that? So that you are compliant and you develop things when they go on. We want a chartered engineer's signature on here. I appreciate for the foreign teams, you've not necessarily got the British IMEC CEng piece. We don't necessarily need it to be an IMEC chartered engineer, and internationally we need the equivalent. Again, you may justify the case if it's not CEng, MIMEC, after the name. We need that. So if you can, academic link, your industry link, someone who will have looked at what you have designed and built and said, that is fit to fly. And good work has been put in behind that. We also need you to sign off what your insurance covers. It's in the rules as to what you need to do. Again, the international teams, consider that you'll probably need travel insurance as well over the top, but there's third-party liability and personal accident liability that you need. And then we ask for other details on elements of the equipment. If you can fill it in, like the example, give us a good picture in there, state fundamental details of what the components are. So we've got the aircraft itself, the propulsion system, flight termination system, RF comms, video comms, and the autopilot. If you can specify frequencies to the power, what type it is, what make and model it is, that's what we need. Please try and fit in the 6 boxes as shown there. The other bit is the back, the third page, page 3, which is some useful heads up. We'll summarise quite a lot of what Lambert has said today and what I've said. At the top, there's some additional notes about things that are useful to refer to. A little document, Civil Aviation Policy, a CAP document called 722, which is Unmanned Aircraft System Operations in UK Airspace Guidance and Policy. Updated last year, July last year, and that's a very useful document for you to understand where airspace operations are. Interestingly, we've got the sub 7 kilo, the 6.9 kilo restriction here, which was the old CAA policy, which set us kind of a reference maximum up mass limit. There is no 7 kilogram policy. We're looking at whether we up the size of the aircraft, the weight of the aircraft, because there's a 20 kilogram certification and operation. But that's where that kind of thing comes from. There are other useful ones Lambert has mentioned. Communication regulations, Ofcom, the Office of Communications in the UK, about power and frequency of operational systems. What a big document to go and hunt down specific ones that we want, but the 2.4 gig and the power settings for that are quoted in there.
Yeah, they are summarised in the rules, so you don't have to delve too deeply into the document.
Additionally, on there, there's a couple of apps. Drone Safe, for instance, very good for you. Ties in UK geofencing, air operations. It will help you when you're testing prior to the event, because you'll know whether you can operate where you're operating, and rather than operate from Southampton cricket ground and fly over the M27 illegally. Will help you know. So there's some good stuff in there. The other piece about it that comes to the FRR is your flight test video. You've got a 10-minute video we need to supply. Now, we have had in the past people who've not submitted a 701 and not submitted a video because they didn't quite have enough to get in. Get in whatever you can by the deadline. To come to the event and give it to us doesn't help, especially when we're going to have quite a few teams coming through. So get what you can. Preferably, you give yourself, done that time management, project management piece well, you've given yourself enough time. Your 10-minute video, you can go and look back. I think the Istanbul University one from a couple of years ago, quite phenomenal. What they put in shows about flight test development, about team organisation, about what the aircraft, how you built it, how they built the aircraft and got it to the event was excellent. Not least, it then also showed us all the important bits about all the phases of flight that the aircraft went through. Preparation, launch, takeoff and manoeuvre, landing and recovery. Preferably autonomous. Get that in your flight test videos. I understand you might not make it in that, but if you can, all the better. So
There is a requirement in the rules this year that is a single take, because you've got to go from takeoff, manoeuvre, and then land as a single. Because in the past we've had lots of cut bits, and there's no telling whether that's the same aircraft doing the same bit. So it's supposed to be a continuous piece of video.
The other useful bits to get in, and again, when it comes to scrutineering, we will take up on, are your team organisation bits. Particularly we saw with the Queen's University Belfast set up, 9 team members, they all had appointments, they knew what their areas of responsibility are, but actually they also had a structure, a regular meeting system, decision-making, recording system. So if you decide to modify the undercarriage, you're the undercarriage team member, then how do you get that past approval, get it fitted to modify the aircraft, get it on as a team? Now it may just be that you use a social media Teams process to do it. Have a good record of that when you go and you use that. Again, aviation, we've got an audit trail. How do you do configuration control modifications? How have you, for instance, overcome some of the challenges? What have been the key ones? Autonomy was mentioned. Maybe making the transportation box. Any of that kind of evidence in there is great for us. It sets us up well through the FDR. It's fascinating stuff, particularly that this went wrong and we crashed and we fixed it. But joking apart, it is good to see how you overcame those challenges. We want to see how you organised and developed, and how you controlled your processes. The other bit we do want to see is this transportation, single carriage assembly. So maybe in your 10-minute video, it shows a quick assembly piece before we get all the phases of flight. And the final bit to pick up, and you don't need to read out all the way through them, but it's something that I would advise that maybe you can show there, but you certainly will need to show us scrutineering your procedural checklists. Flight reference cards for aircrew, but checklist, procedural checklists. What are your setup checklists? Have you done that? What are your safety pre-flight checklists? What are your actions on emergency? How do you do your flight termination? What is your recovery drill? How do you land it? Go and have a look at what a flight reference card is. Tick them off. They can be done on a laptop. However you choose to do it, but that you've got process in order that you're actually going to operate this safely, which is critical. So that's the form 701. And as I said, we mentioned page 3 of that, which is some top tips. Okay, so what happens when you get to Buckminster? You've arrived, you've checked in, you've got into your pit lane, you've sorted out, shaken out, ready, and the call comes for you to come through. And what we do is we do that quite well in advance now. We used to do it just pre-flight and try and get you through it. And in order to keep the flow going, now trying to do that on the arrival day and as early as we can pre-flight. It should be probably about a 20-minute process. Some teams have been phenomenally slick. The functional start, stop checks with flight termination system demonstration record is 38 seconds. Now that isn't setting up the aircraft and going through the checks. Other people, it takes a lot of tackling, messing around, tweaking, and going back and coming back. We need it to be as thick as we can. We need you to be as professional as you can in those jobs. Having checklists is ideal. And needing you to be organised. And that's again why we want this to arrive in a transportation case, so you protected and you delivered that. We were in the environment of the humanitarian mission that you're going on. We may have had to fly that out freight, transport it by road, some distance, whatever. You need it protected and so we have them reach these things out of the van and put them in, actually getting them through the doors into the room that we've done scrutineering in. They've clipped wings and all sorts of things. So again, it's essentially you look at modularity and but if it takes you time to get in and set up, it's putting pressure on everybody else behind you, and that's always a little frustration. So team captains, please let's get these organised. So what you do in that process is go through a number of checks, and we sign these off on the second form, which having been 701 is 705, form 705, which front page lists those checks that we sign you off. And again, this is where team captain signs first signature, scrutineer signs second signature for each stage of that. You'll see the form on the Google Drive. It won't have the assembly and setup. You've got 10 minutes for that. Target time of 3 minutes. So you want to be as slick and good as operation as you can. But we basically fill your stages in here. There may be a requirement to flight test. What we do is a classic good aviation form. We sign off the flight test. And we put it on the back. You may have had a problem. We said we want to see that. Run you through a pre-mission. So there's that form. 705 is your release flight certificate. And we need to have signatures in all those blocks before we can hand you on to the flight line to get you flying. Classic aircraft thing. There's an open entry, as they call it in the logbook. It's not signed off. Aircraft won't fly. So we need to make sure that admin is good. And we come in 4 elements in what we do in the scrutineering. That first element where you come in, the clock starts running, you assemble your aircraft together and get it ready for flight. It's part of the compliance check process that we're doing. Now, again, we have a checklist, I do like the colours, in which we check you off. And there's a whole load of pass-fail criteria that go in there. Not least, we weigh your aircraft, and if it doesn't weigh less than 6.9 kilograms, you don't pass, you don't go flying. That's the way it is. When we set this up, that was the legal requirement. So legal requirement. This is a regulation in this case. There's various other things signed off safety responsibility. The visibility of day-low bits, so we can find them if you do crash. That your batteries are very good, all that. That you've got compliant systems fitted. They've got the CE marking, but they're within the power. And that's where the entries you put in 701 are key to us. So we can see that you are compliant in there. We can just cross-check that that's still that same system. Right, legal, we can go. That's the first step. The second is the set of airworthiness inspections. Then we'll go to the flight control functional checks, the flight termination system. And then we independently, once you've moved on, what we think scrutiny is prize, obviously Queen's came third last year. But that's kind of done without debate with you. It's what we think. I'll come up with a few tips and points as we go through them. So we've done the first phase, which is build the aircraft and let's check it. The second phase is what we call integrity checks, airworthiness integrity checks. Physically, us going in and scrutinising the aircraft. They fall into three areas. Again, they're compliant with the themes that Lambert had in your CDR. There's structural integrity, so the mechanical bit that it fits together safely and has that literally structural integrity to stay together in the conditions across the flight envelope and landing that you would. Propulsion integrity, whatever system you use, and bear in mind, yes, a lot of fixed wing electric prop aircraft, we get a lot of rotary wing, electric rotor aircraft. We have had internal combustion engines, fixed wing, and last year we had a cracking helicopter that in their COT system was flying the head and the rotor. That propulsion integrity check is to check that blades won't come off in flight. You have securely mounted any propulsion system. And that when you apply power in whatever way, whether it's steering or forward flight, it's not going to rip out of the mounting. So that propulsion integrity. And the final catch is systems integrity. And that's any of the components that you fitted, generally avionic fitted, will function correctly and not impair the function of anything else. So, we click on one. The first thing about that is structural integrity. And it was mentioned earlier that you have 2 points of security. So, if one fails, you've got a secondary system in there. It's not necessarily it's got 2 bolts to hold it on, but that each bolt has 2 means of security. Some examples up there. You've got a lock nut. Okay. You should be talking about there's a rundown torque strength in the nylon in that. They are reusable, but only so often. That's only one means of safety. Okay, as is a lock washer holding a nut. One means of safety. Lock wire comes in as a secondary means of safety. You have locked the bolt, and then you wire lock it. So, as you can see with the lock washer, tightening it down, you've only got one form. You can add over it arrowdite. You can lock off with arrowdite. There's a thing called torque seal. It's very good. You put a torque strike on it. You can see when that cracks. We'll count that as a secondary. But critically, the best way with nuts and bolts is to have 2 nuts. You lock one nut onto the other. And critically within that, it can be in safety. Hopefully, you get the engineering piece. It's not good enough just to have the nut out on top of the bolt. You should show more than 1.5 threads. That's over the second locking bolt. If you haven't got the grip and the torque lock provided by the second bolt. So in safety is something we'll look at, particularly on propulsion systems that are mounted by locking devices. You need that 1.5 threads. In there, we've talked mechanical, structural integrity, piece that, your undercarriage is strong enough to absorb a heavy landing. Maybe not fully, you may be, Citroen 2CV crash worthy, that bits will fall off when you land, but fundamentally, but we want this to be able to take what you would expect normal landings to be. That control runs are straight secure when they're fitted. We don't want buckling push rods to go through. They should be nice linear runs. For systems integrity, there's all sorts of odds and ends, but those who've got any knowledge of the Navy look at a bunch of wires that's thrown in and call it snake's wedding, which you'll hear from a particular scripter that works for us, Freddie, who's in the Navy. That's your wires all over the place. Your wires should be tidily routed and secured, so they're not going to interfere with the controller. They're not going to drop through and trap something else, interfere with your delivery system. They're quite key. Equally, on your propulsion integrity, fuel lines, your internal combustion engine, they are secure. They're not going to flex in flight if your engine mounts very secure. But equally, batteries aren't damaged, aren't overcharged, aren't swollen, aren't hot. We'll be looking at all those kind of things. And fundamentally around there, we get back to Lambert's point about weatherproofing. There's a whole load of incidents coming through the MACA reporting system about Mavic failing in flight due to short circuit and corrosion from so have a think about that, particularly those who are doing multi-rotor stuck out on legs and nothing really protecting the and of course, within that, your payload dispatch system, is that robust enough to do the job? Does it function smoothly? Are you going to drop the payload, but at the same time, it's going to, the parachute is going to catch on the undercarriage. We're going to look at the mechanism. Simple release mechanisms are best. Bear in mind the effects of gravity. And that's another one. If you've got nuts and bolts in control runs and the like, you put them so the bolt drops into the hole in the slot, and the nut is on the bottom, double secured, not the bolt comes from the top, and if you you can put that on. Because if the nut comes off, the bolt drops out, the control room doesn't work. If the nut falls off the other way, at least you've got a bolt through the two irons in the control room, hold by gravity. What we'll also be looking at, obviously, is your transportation system and checking natural busting. Hopefully, it contains it in a nice, small, simple, lightweight. Okay. The third kind of inspection phase is the controls and functions test. You'll go to some place just short of the flight line, airside, at which you will go through how you set up pre-flight. You will run up, but if you've got detachable rotors, we will take the rotors off. Fixed wing, prop driven, we may need to find some way, if you can't move the prop, to hold the aircraft. We want to see your start, stop procedures, your flight termination system within the times given in the remote, which is to power off the flight termination system on command, which will obviously simulate the loss of down uplink, but we want to see function of controls in terms of sense of direction. So a multi-copter, we need to see that motors run up down differentially to be able to turn it. We need to see on fixed wing actuation of ailerons and rudder. We get opposite and together in the right direction as needed. Okay, and the final bit, once you've pushed on we'll have a sit down and look at our marking sheet. We have, a compliance one, and then we make notes around what we think of your system, how tight it was wired, how robust it was, weatherproof, all that stuff, and we mark you for the scrutineer's prize, the best presented UAS. And in there, we really take from those inspections 3 areas. We're looking at quality of build, how you finish it, where you've run a control run neatly. People have hacked chunks out of their rudder so they can get a control run. All that needed. We're looking at airworthiness, safety, in-flight of the system, the integrity, and your safety procedures. So what you have in your flight reference. So you can produce them to us, whether they're on a laptop or an hard copy or whatever. We want to see them and show which hopefully you will have demonstrated adequately through your setup drills and through your functional checks. So, again, aviation, NASA does it. It's good practice. And in there, we are going to look at things like crashworthiness, weatherproofing. But we're going to talk through carriage and assembly and how repeatable and consistent. When you're going through the checks, your aircraft will get a number of stickers as they go through, and you get to getting a release to flight sticker, which is what the flight safety officer gives you on the flight. We will run you through those compliance checks to get your red sticker. We'll then go through your airworthiness integrity checks. You get your ammo sticker. If we need a flight test, we'll put a blue sticker on. Get through a quick flight test loop. Come back. Sign you off on the ammo sticker. Again, the 705 certificate, the release to flight certificate, goes with you. You have a little folder. Just keep stuff in the folder and over the pages out. So when it gets to the flight safety officer, he can check, yeah, we've got no open entries, we're all clear, and he will release you to flight. And it'll come back to us. So when you hand back your tracker at the end, you'll hand back your log. If you're going to have subsequent flights, we'll reopen. So in summary, and I think it was rather good for me, Queen's University, excellent. Be prepared for scrutiny. We are not the Spanish Inquisition. We don't have any cushions. But it's quite a skilled team. I've got a lot of serving ex-military guys, who've done this for real operations. A lot of ING, CNG guys in industry. We go. It's an experienced bunch of guys. But they're looking for things that rub us up and down. Say, Freddie, the Navy guy, we're going to have a look at what the wiring stuff, but he's actually he's pretty hot on the so the FRR, make sure your video is good. As I say, really, especially if you've got someone who's get them on doing it. Putting together a good video that shows us not just all those stages of flight, but actually how you develop, how you got there, the flight test regime that you've done, even your static test regime. We were talking to someone earlier. You saw the flex of that wing. There's a good bit of video last year or the year before of people doing hanging weights off the wings of the aircraft. They haven't turned the aircraft upside down to show actual flex that would happen, but they've done something to demonstrate. F701 is critical. We need it, however complete you want to be. We need it. It needs to reflect where you are with that platform. As with your video, should be the aircraft, the air system you are bringing to the event. Not here's the one we crashed. This is another one. the aircraft that you effectively will certify. And make sure and hopefully demonstrate in your video that you've all got roles, you've got procedures, you've got checklists and things that you've developed to show that you're organised and you've managed it well. As with Lambert, make sure before the event you've got the documentation back in time with receipt. Get all those checks and procedures when they're trying to do stuff in your pit. You're going to be rushing. There'll be time when you're going to have to correct stuff. You have a problem. You need that time to be doing that, not developing your final product. And I can't say enough. When we get into it, it's just fill, shake, wrap, and roll checks that we'll do. We'll just, is this really secure? Have you just velcroed that on? That's not good enough. In flight, that's not good enough. If that jams in the control room, short stop a system. How good is your electrical connections? In safety, are your nuts and bolts? And wiring is going to be control. What I do have on the Google Drive from over the last 3 or 4 years, we've developed various little design guides, and you can see one with that on the front, and a red cross parcel, and another one like that. There's all sorts of top tips.
These are on the web page at the moment on the Google Drive.
Okay.
Yeah, on the web page, yes.
So, yeah, it's on the web page. So, how you fit control runs together, what you've got to think about. There may well be what you're doing. Great information. But there's some good top tips, and it's not something to pick up in June. Go and have a look at it before you start putting stuff together. But there is points to be gained for the prize. How well, how fine, the quality of finish you've got in the product. Good luck. Challenge. Things have improved remarkably over the last 5 years. So we keep that momentum rolling. The experience you gain from other teams, maybe from the briefing here, builds on that. But as I say, what we want to see is something good from you that makes our job much more enthusiastic. That we get from you good stuff, because we will query down a bit going, got that, what is construct of your work. Good luck with them. Any questions?
So you did mention this flight test there.
Yeah.
When's
If, for instance, you fail scrutineering, we've got a particular problem. We may wish to see that flight test. You may crash on ignition when you come onto another flight. You may want to see that flight check. You bent the propeller, you crashed on. Let's go and get that through. We will specify what we do on the back of the form is specify pre-flight corrective actions.
before?
Yeah, if we're doing this, which is convention, normal flight operations, that needs a checklist. It might just need ground.
Just to clarify that Rob said about the importance of the FRR, if teams demonstrate to us that everything has been delivered through the FRR, you've met all the requirements for the flight test before the event, then there shouldn't be any requirement for a flight test before the event, which is why we introduced the rules of the quick preparation and assembly of the aircraft, so you're ready to go as soon as you get through the area.
So, for instance, we had so actually they didn't have to demonstrate their aircraft last year. They then had to reconstruct it. Batteries pre on arrival for them, let's just get them through a confirmatory test for them. Necessarily specific, but they, deconstruct this thing with change frequencies or whatever it is. But it may be in the event something happens, you've got to do a quick running repair. Confirm that mission. We don't need to do a payload demonstrating a specific event. And it may be on the ground.
So we've one online here. What often goes wrong during scrutineering? So what's the top issue?
I think it's probably that first point I've got in that summary slide is preparation. People don't know what they're supposed to be doing, and that the aircraft is not fit to fly at the point that they bring it in. Obviously, it's not going to be this year, it's going to be in a container. But actually, it needs to be fit to fly at the point that it has been rebuilt. But yeah, it's a lot of it is the frustration of seeing excess wire all over the place, not properly securing, I should say, a Velcro pad underneath. When actually, could you not have locked that down? Maybe a zip lock. It may be that you could secure that more effectively. It's got a secondary system. People are just sometimes wedging stuff into the body of the fuselage, and it's held together on friction. Well, actually, when that hits the ground quite hard, that's going to pop and potentially traction control, particularly a control room, but maybe even a control system. Generally, we don't find a problem with batteries. We look for that. We want to check that you're not using an old and damaged one. LiPo, again, there's instructions in there. You do need to bring something to be able to contain and take away any LiPo damage, fire damage, once they are nasty. For the international teams, please flag up any problems you have with transportation. Well, the teams have been great in supporting each other in lending stuff. The other bit we find is in the pit lanes, people disappear, put stuff on, batteries on charge, and walk away. You can't do that. It will be unplugged and confiscated. Refueling, if you've got an internal combustion engine, must be under control. You can't leave petrol in the hangar. It's in the refuel area. So it's those procedural bits. The bits we find in the pit lane, and we'll be assessing that. Those are your safety procedures. We've had people soldering here while someone else is working there, and the solder fumes are quite happily wafting over the other guy, let alone themselves. That people have sat with a bar across their legs drilling. You may not have kids yet, you may want them, but there's time with blowing little compressed air up in people's eyes. Great if you're an optician, you're testing the pressure of the eyeball. It's not great in engineering. We've had people on skateboards in the hangar. So again, part of this whole thing will be getting you in that flight safety, airworthiness safety bubble and understanding their procedures. Some of them are just a bit draconian and you don't do it. We just have to do fog checks. The foreign object damage of our vehicles that plan better. Checking the tyres if you drove in through the wire on any day. So again, a lot of procedural stuff. Have those reference cards, have those checklists. That's what we do in aviation. It makes it feasible, it confirms to you, you know what you're doing, and you do it in a chronological, sensible order. And you've probably got a reaction to stuff if it doesn't follow the routine. So no single repeated errors, but they're generalisms over quite a lot. If you build something well, it will probably look pretty good and be pretty tidy. You can identify. You don't need your wires to be wire tight. You want some stuff in there. You might want a loop, the old condensation issue. you know, again, cargo. But actually, you don't want those and those of it. Not least, you don't want to waste the weight of that extra bit of wire. Just think how it's good. People who've made hatches and canopies that are flush, recessed, and neat. Other people just needs very lightweight. Just needs a bit of Velcro on the base, and a bit of Velcro on the end of it, and that locks it shut down. The airflow keeps it closed. You don't mind because it's done well. That may be the way to say. Others, brilliant. CNC, fantastic layout labs that they've got. It depends on the facilities you have access to. Other people have effectively modified the platform that the previous team did. They're trying to reduce the ability to do that. But actually, some of those are very, very well done by the technicians. Yeah.
Sorry for the webinar. Can we repeat that question?
Yeah, so it's about, for rapid assembly, the use of quick connectors, hip pins. So long as those are positive locking, that's fine. Yeah, it's for torque loaded locking systems. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So if you press it on the into the, does it have a, preferably it has an engaged locking mechanism at the end of it. But actually, if it's kind of main spar pin coming in, that's some of there's sufficient resistance in there. The loading on that is perpendicular to the locking bar. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, well, we're happy with that. As an interference stick piece, provided it can't vibrate loose. But you're not airworthy if it's not. So yeah, you demonstrate it, prove it. Positive locking is what we would like, but some of those they are held by the load of the airflow. What I'm talking about is locking engagement of torque loaded bolts. Locking because it's generally vibration. On a helicopter now, there's a lot of vibration in helicopters. It's major. But actually, in large aircraft, yeah, I'd probably be happy with that. What I don't know with a locknut is how many times you've used it. So, it should be a single use component. So, what we want is some secondary means. So yeah, we're getting a locking mechanism, a lock washer, and then the nylon with the lock. Again, we've got a barrel from there. We go through BMFA, we don't have to license BMFA insurance. Exactly. BMFA, they normally come with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's normally associated with the license.
Yeah, which is your
the
BMFA.
BMFA. That's all.
So
Yeah.
your current liability one.
So thanks, Rod, for presenting that part there. We'll just move on to the next bit. So for this next bit, Christina's going to give us a bit of presentation on the demonstration event.
So I don't know if you guys have your calendar up on your phone. So if you go to June, 17th of June is the first day when you should aim to arrive on site at the BMFA. So on that day, we'll expect you to arrive before 4 p.m. for registration, picking up your badge, your high vis, for setting up your pit stop to set up your aircraft and things like that. Just logistical things. And then in the evening, around 6 p.m., we'll have a safety briefing. I think Alex might go a bit more in detail on that. So that's the 17th of June. 18th of June, we'll start fresh and ready. 18th of June will be purely scrutineering day, right? All day scrutineering, and I think you will, especially the international teams, will have some opportunity to do some test flights, especially international teams because they carry their aircraft from abroad. 19th and the 19th and 20th of June is the flight days, and the 20th of June we'll have the award ceremony in the evening. So make sure you have you give yourself some time. So if the award ceremony is around 5 p.m., don't schedule to leave around 6 because there may be delays due to the flight schedule. We always have a very complicated flight schedule, but it never goes to plan, unfortunately. So just give yourself time, and you can always leave on the next day, on the Sunday morning, to pack up and leave. So if you're camping on site, for example. On 18th and 19th of June, we also will have a few schools coming for a STEM outreach event. This has been running for 2 years now, and it's proved to be very successful. And what we would like to ask our teams is only to engage with those the school kids. When they come around to see your aircraft, we would all ask you kindly to speak to them and explain what you're doing in a simple way, why we're doing, what's exciting about this, and how they can become an engineer. So I went slightly ahead of the agenda on the STEM engagement focus. But also, if I know some teams, you guys go to local schools and you talk to kids and do some workshops. So if you do any of that STEM outreach activity, just drop us an email, send us some pictures, let us know that you're doing something. You know, we are looking maybe in the future to make it a more, solid part of the competition, maybe do it as a separate award. So let us know what you're doing. So that's the day by day. In terms of traveling, I have loads of questions on that, especially from international teams. Just look on the Google Maps, look on booking.com, hotels.com, Airbnb for a cheaper option, but you're always welcome to camp on site. If you're camping on site, you'll be provided with catering facilities, shower and toilet facilities, drinking facilities, charging facilities, all of that is available. But you will have to bring your own tent. And please don't bring a Tesco tent that we had before. Wales was really bad weather, and even with the military tent that our team had, they got flooded. So, but hopefully now we're moving to Buckminster, and it seems that the weather there is really hot usually. So hopefully it's not going to rain. I think, but also, bring some stuff to wear, some warm clothes as well. Some people from Pakistan had slippers on. That doesn't work, I think. You need something warm. And also, if it's hot, make sure you take some sun cream or anything, hats to protect you, especially when you're on the airfield. And in terms of the submission, so if you need to make changes to your team members, if you need to update your membership numbers, make sure these are updated before 1st of March. If you need to make some changes to your team list, send me a note by email. I'll forward you the team information that I've got on file for now. You're updated for me and you resend it back, so I capture the information correctly. Otherwise, I may make my errors. There are about 400 of you. And that's pretty much all, I think, from the logistics. I think Alex would like to go into more detail.
So, hello. I'm going to try and give a bit more detail. Is it possible to zoom in on that map by any chance? On the map in the top right-hand corner, just so that... So I've got a few points to run through. First of all, I'll go through changes to the 2020 competition for those of you who have been involved and have competed before, and then a few reinforcements of what we're still doing the same from last year. So as you can see, we're operating from a very different site this year from BMFA Buckminster compared to Clanbetter last year. The site is significantly smaller. However, it is catered to operating small UAS, such as we run in the competition. They do quite a lot of other competitions, such as the BMFA Heavy Lift Challenge there, and they have operating clearances there for operating a small UAS within CAP 722 and also outside of CAP 722 norms. Obviously, we will operate as per the UAS Challenge rules for 2020. So the site, as you enter from the road here to the south, you'll arrive at the car park. The building white here that I'm circling with the cursor is the hangar, where you'll be set up in the pit lanes for your maintenance activities and for preparing your aircraft for scrutineering. On the left of that building, there is a couple of rooms which will be used for the scrutineering and for the hazardous maintenance area. So any composite repairs or any sort of composite curing that you need to do, please make sure you do it in there, away from all of the other competitors, so that you're not giving anybody any horrible carcinogenics. Over here is the main reception building, which is where the Dragon's Den presentations are going to take place. And then as you make your way past a secondary car park here out to the flight line will be operated from here with essentially a small low fence barrier or a ribbon barrier. Unlike Lambetter, we won't have big fences to keep you all off the flying area, so please make sure that you stay behind those lines when you're at the event and we're operating. And then there will be 2 mission areas set up. At the moment, we're still planning out where those missions will be and what the waypoint layout for those will be, but roughly this sort of section over here of this field will be for the primary mission. That's your payload drop, and then for the reconnaissance and endurance challenges, those will be a separate flying area over here, so that we can actually run 2 simultaneous flight lines at the same time under the direction of the same flight safety officer. So that brings me on to my next point. This year we're going to be operating 2 flight lines. We've never done this before, so this is going to be a huge change in how we run the competition, primarily to try and fit the number of teams into the space and time that we've got allocated for missions, and to allow teams as many opportunities to fly the mission as possible. So for 2020, we've also introduced the rules that teams can fly up to 3 missions, have 3 attempts at the mission, both the core and the optional mission. Of those, the average of 2 best flights will be taken as the score. Please note that we're scheduling to have the availability to provide this number of flights for teams. However, as highlighted by Rod and by Lambert, any delay to the schedule, any impact to the schedule from people not being ready, agreeing to go out for a flight at 12 o'clock but then not turning up until 12:30 is all going to impact the schedule. We do operate a very tight schedule, so any delays like that are outside of our control, and we will need to mitigate that and move people's flight times accordingly. So please, as soon as you get to the event, your team leaders should speak to our scheduler to agree the flight time that they're going to aim for, and if there's going to be any delays, let us know plenty enough in advance so that we can move another team up to the front of the queue and keep flying going, keep the flow of the competition going. We're gonna run more of a queuing system this year. So rather than in previous years where we fix you with specific flight times and try and make you adhere to that, we're just going to set up a queue up to the flight line. The scrutineering stop will be on the way, where you do your ground checks and any of the flight termination system checks before you go to fly your mission. But once you're in that queue, you're in that position of the queue. If you reach the flight line and you have technical problems, anything that is going to delay the program, then we will send you to the back of the queue to go and fix those problems, and then you can rejoin the queue to come and fly your mission, just so we can keep the flow going. So it was mentioned in the rules that some supplementary rules may be released throughout the competition year close to the event. We are looking at releasing some supplementary rules, but none of the rules that we are going to introduce will impact any of your design development or any of the mission requirements. This is primarily going to capture the changes to the CAA regulations for pilot registration. So this year, the CAA, or I think back end of last year, the CAA have now formally issued their requirements for small UAS pilot registration. So we will issue some rules after our next steering committee, which is next week, to clarify what we require of teams to register with the CAA before arriving at the event, so that we can stay within regulations. We're not doing anything outside of that that could cause CAA upset. There are going to be some other operators on site. From speaking to the BMFA, I believe it's at the far end or each far end of the runway. There are some small circular cut areas of grass. All of their operations are going to be tethered, so it's not going to interfere with what we're doing for the US Challenge competition. Likewise, I'd ask all the attendees at the event not to interfere with their operations and what they're doing, but feel free to go over and show your interest and have a look at what they're doing. It does sound like it'd be quite interesting. Okay, and I think that's it for changes to 2020 that Rod and Lambert haven't covered. So same as 2019 competition, Flight Safety Officer is in charge of all operations. We can't stress this enough. All of our safety case is underpinned by the fact that the Flight Safety Officer has complete control of the airspace and anything flying within that airspace. So when you arrive at the flight line, you do not launch, you do not sneeze, you don't cough unless the Flight Safety Officer allows you to do so. I jest with that, but really we have had it in previous years where teams have launched their aircraft without permission of the Flight Safety Officer, because the safety pilot who was going to be controlling the aircraft said, yep, I'm good to go, but the Flight Safety Officer hadn't confirmed. They clicked launch, aircraft launched off the end catapult, and Flight Safety Officer stopped all operations and sent them off flight line because it was in breach of our operating safety case. So please, whenever you go to the flight line to do any sort of operation, make sure that you have direction and confirmation from the Flight Safety Officer before you do anything. The team of schedulers that we'll have at the event, they'll be roughly a team of 4 people. They will be managing all of the flying operations and the timings to make sure that we can maintain flow of flying during the event. Just make sure that you communicate with them any issues that you're having in meeting your allocated flight times or getting to the queue, so that we can try and manage that, and we can try and make sure that we keep teams going through at a regular rate. They will be notified to you during the briefing at the event as well, so you know exactly who you need to go to. As Christina said, there's very minimal flex in the schedule. We only produce a formal schedule as a validation that we can deliver the amount of flights that we promised as part of the rules, but actually when it comes to the event, things go wrong. We do have to manage it quite reactively, so to say, just communicate with us and we'll do our best to make sure everyone gets a fair shot. There will be team briefings at the end of each day, as we did last year. It seemed to work really well, having all the team leaders come in at the end of each day just to give a summary of what had happened and give any plans for the next day, so that we can make sure that we got things back on track. So I can't stress enough, please make sure that all of your team leaders turn up to the briefings at the end of each day. We will be allocating a time for those at the end of flying, which is, I think, 5 o'clock normally.
5, 6.
Depending on the light levels and depending on how tired the FSO is and how much he wants a beer. So yeah, we will let you know at the start of the competition when those will be held, and yeah, please make sure that your team captains arrive so that we can keep you fully informed of what the plans are for the whole competition.
I think you have to say, you have to turn up for those. We can't use the time to rebrief individual teams.
Yeah.
You have to be there.
It's mandated.
You can't just wander off site.
Yeah, and certainly I think you can probably see from teams who were very successful last year and won the prizes, they were at every single brief and they were there ready, understanding exactly what they needed to do the next day so that they could get in, get prepped and get out to the flight line as soon as they could. Dragon's Den will be run very similarly to last year. Our schedule team will deconflict your flying times and when your predicted flying times are with your Dragon's Den presentation. So again, please make sure you go and speak to them regularly, team leaders, to make sure that you're not going to have any conflict between your flights and your Dragon's Den. But our schedule team will make sure that they deconflict that as much as possible. But obviously, any delays on your side to get flying could then impact your Dragon's Den. So just keep us informed. And the last one, so as Christina said, there is camping available on site. I know not everyone will be. We're all there to have fun, but please keep decorum while you're camping on site. We will have some BMFA staff camping on site just in case there's any issues, but obviously we're very interested in coming back to this venue, and we want to make sure that everyone behaves well on site, and also no operating outside of hours, only operations under the direction of the flight safety officer, and that includes once we wrap up for each day. So yeah, I think that's everything I had to cover.
Okay, thanks, Alex. So,
shall we go straight into the next one, and then we can take the questions at the end. We've also got a little, very small multiple sum up today.
Yep, no problem. So, prizes and awards.
Right. We'll do this very section 6. So there are 13 awards available. So third chance of getting an award. So it's not bad odds here with awards. The principal awards are the grand champion, the runner-up, and the third place, which are made up of 200 points on the paperwork stages that you will have been going through, and then 400 points on the flight demonstration event. And so that is a simple first, second, and third place there. But note what Alex has said is that we're giving you this multiple opportunities for flying, but you need to be a bit savvy about this, because you might do a cracking first flight. If you go and do a second flight, you might actually reduce your score if you don't score as much as you do on the first flight, because it becomes an average. So you're going to have to do a bit of game playing at this game, and be confident that you're going to keep rising your number rather than falling it. So just think about that. But the other awards, you've got an innovation award, which is what we've read and will read and see. What we will read and see of your UAS. Design award, again, it's again what we will read about, and again we'll what we see later. Carry on, please. Then there's the scrutineering award that Rod has mentioned. A safety award, again, picking up on what Rod has said, safety is really important, and so this will be, again, looking at what's been written and what we will see at the demonstration event, and covering all aspects of safety.
Including the pit lanes.
Yes, including the pit lane. Yes, everywhere that you are, on the flight line, in the pit lane, etc. So it's just this total approach to safety. An airworthiness award, which again comes through what the scrutineers see at the demonstration event, and what's called an operational supportability one, and this is about this out of the box type thing that we've introduced this year. So that's a further award. Then at the Dragon's Den is getting across your business approach, your business case for it, and again, it's coming along ideally with a presentation, a PowerPoint type presentation. Maybe bring your UAS or other props into the room. I mean, a relatively short presentation, but to an audience there. And at the same time, we'll be judging the media and engagement award at that same same event. So we want to cover both your business proposition and what you've been doing in media engagement. But remember, you've got your A0 poster up, and so you can convey some of this stuff on the A0 poster as well. And the judges and sponsors and indeed the school kids will all be wandering around. And so, having an attractive and informative A0 poster is going to help in impressing people at some of these awards as well. The Most Promise Award, which is always a bit of a controversial one, but as it says, for the entrant which didn't quite make it all to work on the day, and so it's an opportunity for us to reward someone who we thought could have done if things had gone their way better. And then there's the opportunity of the highest placed new entrant, so that's the university team that hasn't been at the event before. Again, will be the highest scoring one on the, so that's really a fourth award in the sort of grand champion type event. We also generally throw out a few sort of commendation certificates if there are things that we notice around that we like seeing, and they could be almost anything. We're quite keen to try and recognise that, even if they don't neatly fit into one of these awards. Okay.
So I think the last bit was just on STEM.
I
think
just mentioned.
Yeah. And so that's about it. So if anybody wants to ask a few questions on the overall competition, whether it's from the judges, the scrutineers, or for safety or project manager about the event, please do so now, including those online, and we'll try and answer them as best we can. So
if it's not possible to tie your pilot down to those 4 days in June, it would be possible to have a pilot allocated when we get there, the correct certification.
So all of the operations, because as with last year, we mandated the it will just be the safety pilot that the IMG provides. So there's no requirement for a certified pilot with you. You have to have the insurance for the pilot liability from the MFA. So it's to do with the new CAA regulations. What's the pilot command? What's the UA operator? And the terminology for those. So we will put this formally in the supplementary rules to be released, but the teams will provide the UA operator, not the pilot who commands the flight coordination system. They are just responsible for the safety of the operation, i.e. planning the correct waypoints within the line of sights that then be done.
Do they have to be BMFA certified?
No, they don't have to be a BMFA or BMFA-A or BMFA-B certified pilot. They just have to have the license to get the membership. They don't have to take the test.
You want a quick definition? Operator, person, organisation, or enterprise engaged in operating to engage in aircraft operation.
That's the team. Yeah.
The pilot is the person in direct control of the UA, so remote pilot. Remote pilot, a natural person responsible for safely conducting the flight of an unmanned aircraft operating its flight controls either manually or when the unmanned aircraft flies automatically by monitoring its course and remaining able to intervene and change the course at any time. So that's the safety pilot that we provide.
We would have that individual in the supervisory. We look at the BMFA certification. We have the basic BMFA covered.
Operator. Yeah, so as an operator, that's fine. Yeah,
It's only the BLA. It's only the IMT safety pilot that we provide the BLA certification A or B. So testing, you just need to make sure that you are in accordance with current regulations for that operation. So, yeah, you would need to consult the current captain to do that 393 on what's required. I think, though, providing you're registered with the CAA and you have possibly passed the online test if they've released that yet. It's an online safety test. Okay, so providing you are registered as a pilot of that aircraft and you complete the online test, then you are within regulation to fly your aircraft outside the US.
So you do so you land.
Yes, I mean, as far as I can gather, actually, you won't have to carry it far because there's only one flight safety officer, so they'll both take off from the same basic area.
And you can't take I'm talking about basically, do I have to keep my rep for T2? So,
well, it all depends what it involves. I mean, I guess the scenario is you'll have done the first thing, you'll have dropped your aid package, and you'll land it again. You may change your battery or refuel your aircraft, whatever's required, and go off and do the next mission. If in fact, to do that, you've decided, for instance, that the camera that you're going to use on the second mission, you're now going to put on the aircraft, I would have thought you need to go back through scrutineering because the aircraft will have to be weighed again. The integrity of that installation will have to be checked. Now, you can do that. I don't think there's anything that says you can't do that.
Well,
but
I think the T2 mission is your remaining time.
Oh, of course,
minus,
that's true.
So
yes, you're right. It's the remaining time.
Yeah, so you won't have
time
to go back through scrutineering. So it's best to assume that whenever you finish mission 1, minus your payload, you're ready to go for mission 2.
We have to the end
we need to weigh with both. So one in, take it out, fit the other. We need to check both are compliant and that the means of securing and check. So we're signing off an aircraft structural integrity correctly. It's actually going to be on your signature anyway, if you've got to remember. So you know,
both scenarios within one.
Yeah. Provided we're content that it's not major modification, you are. Yeah. In module spot, but both are within the compliance requirements of the that section of weight.
Where our wings
yeah, that should be okay. We will give it effectively a subjective test when we go on there to see how that works. Yeah, effectively you're justifying adequate security. If you look in the military environment, there's all three.
So
that's part of your systems.
Yeah.
So one team just made a point online there about bringing tools and safety gear. So teams should bring everything they need to operate their UAS, including any tools they need to repair it. There will be Bernice on site setting aside an area for hazardous workshop.
Safety.
Yeah, big composites, so
And-
that appropriate, you should bring appropriate PPE if you need it. If you're for some reason going to be drilling or something, you probably want eye guard. You know, if you're going to be soldering, you may be thinking of having something for breathing, you know, a mask in some way.
Yeah.
Which will probably help you from coronavirus as well. Yeah, just speaking, you should be self-sufficient to operate. That, if you're doing GRP work, you might want to go and have a facility in which to cure your GRP. Fine, that will be provided. You've got the MOD capability for composite repair, mobile composite repair, and accident assessment. Fascinating to go and have a look at. The judges that we've got.
It is a good point. This actually, I should have said earlier, is can you make sure in your CDR you make clear what materials you're using? Some of you did in your CDR, but I mean, not only is it really part of your design description, it should include what the materials you're using are, but it is important for us to know so that if there are any material issues that we need to cater for on site, is that Bernice can have the appropriate environment to work on those materials. So, I mean, certainly, quite a lot of you have talked about the use of composites and etc. So we have tried to collect that data. But please make absolutely clear that we know, and certainly if any odd material that might need a degree of isolation.
Yeah, and just another note on safety in the pit lanes and stuff like that. If you're not using tools, they should be put away so that nobody can pick them up, especially when we have the STEM event with the kids there, so they're not picking up glue. Last year, we've seen a few teams with 3D printers that were left unattended that are susceptible to go on fire. That's a no. You need to,
Will be acquired.
you need to be present whenever, if you're using 3D printers, or talk to Bernice to have it in the proper working area so it's out of the way and it's in a safe location. So no, because again, your pit lanes aren't marked off, so people can come over and look at your thing, get knocked over, and there's quite a lot of things to go on. So somebody has to be there to look at it, make sure nothing's happening. It's the same principle with the batteries charging.
Yeah.
You have to be present.
There's all those. There are the basic trip hazards from cables, all the cut and damage hazards from stuff lying around. Good engineering practice should be tidy, organised, have good husbandry. Aviation, you should maintain tool control. I'm not expecting you to have shadow boards and tallies and stuff, but actually you shouldn't be just doing stuff and dumping. You should put it back in a toolbox and out the way. It's just good aviation practice. It's common sense, but it's actually good safety. High vis, you will be issued with high vis, and you will be expected to wear the appropriate colour of high vis that you get, and you'll see scrutineers, judges wear one colour, teams wear another, the administration team wear another, that sort of thing. So it gives us that guidance, and it is high vis. They should be done up, velcroed, they shouldn't be hanging off you, and flapping in the wind. Again, safety, it's basic stuff. But it's control of your stuff. No, don't expect safety boots. We aren't really carrying heavy loads. This is a 7 kilogram aircraft most. However, open-toed sandals, slippers, flip-flops, are not acceptable. Again, just it's around the margins of a little bit of safety, but decent paragraph, something a bit robust. Equally, just be aware that you can bring in FOD for the international students. You may not be aware. Foreign object damage, any litter stuff. We expect you to pick it up and put it in the bin, even if it's not yours. So we don't dump Coke cans around the place. We don't, COSH, control of substance hazardous health, glue, fuel, batteries charging, electric drills, composites, materials that could have a vapor hazard, a snagging hazard, something like that. Yes, you may want to bring protective gloves, for instance. Just depends on what you've got, but you should be adequately prepared for that. But it is essential that you have good engineering hygiene, engineering husbandry, and tool.
We bring
Absolutely. It's just fine your case. We want you to have, the equivalent flight reference cards or maintenance safety check procedures that you follow them. Like I say, that's what NASA do. That's when, they go out on a spacewalk. They have checklists. They're brilliantly presented and codified, but they were literally in American terms a checklist, a tick list that you went through. It's repeatable, and that ensures safety. You've established that, you've been through, you've evolved it because you've done it in test and evaluation of your platform, and you've come up with that's the best order to do it in. That makes you operate it in a slick manner, but it's repeatable because it's repeatable, it's safe. So absolutely, yeah. Go and have a look. There's I think Spitfire flight reference cards are on Google somewhere. Just go and have a look. But it's something that works for you. I'd say it may be that you have it on something that flicks up. If you've got somebody who can write an app, brilliant. And code it and do it, and you can just nod it through as you go. But it shows that you've thought this through in the engineering discipline piece, which links to the operator, and it suits the operator. Aircrew procedures are exactly that, and that's what flight reference cards are. So something's gone wrong. How come the flight reference cards? They're a flip card, and one pilot is confirming to the other, do this. Oh no, that's out. Right, therefore, yeah, you've got that. Preferably not scribbled in a notebook, waiting to get wet when it rains, even though it won't rain in.
Yeah, this will be provided inside.
So normal life support is there.
But you need to bring your camping gear. That's the
Yeah.
And if you like to guarantee you've got toilet roll, bring your own toilet roll. Don't leave it in the loo.
I would recommend do it.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll be provided campsite, and I doubt that the MFA go into the facilities after hours.
There'll be a specific charging bay.
Even just bringing emergency power.
Yeah.
Bank,
Yeah.
just Yep. Sorry, there's some question from over here. No? Sorry, it's all
That
coming
side
from
is
this
very
direction.
quiet. So we've got limited number of sponsors at the moment, and those sponsors have a limited number of mentors in their company. So we have a lot of teams, and we don't That's the problem. We have other sponsors in the hoping to keep soon. I'm really sorry. It is we picked up the teams random to give them the same opportunity. And it just happens sometimes don't happen.
Yeah, just from my point of view as a sponsor and kind of managing the mentors party, the mentors have full-time jobs, and depending on how busy they are in the company, they can spare an hour, maybe they can't. So we try our best to get as many mentors as possible, but the other thing is they're volunteers as well. So if they're missing time during the day, talk to you up by phone or answer emails, you might have to make up that time during the week for work-related activities. So it is kind of difficult to try and get a dedicated person. I mean, you should have your academic supervisor as your key contact to drive your project. I know some universities get better support than others, but Christina is trying with the rest of the sponsors to get as many mentors as possible. If you don't have a mentor, that doesn't prohibit you from asking the IMKE any technical questions you have or anything related to the rules. We'll try and do our best by it, but you know, there's a limited amount of people here that can do the help.
But there's nothing to stop you either going and finding your own mentor from industry. Is that, you know, and maybe through your academic department, is might have contacts with Airbus or someone like that. You could, you know, look at the initiative yourself, and that might be an added bonus point. You could then suck them in as sponsors of the of the competition. We might give you an extra point or two.
CDR.
Well, it's principally how you present it. I mean, I guess if you use £3,500 worth of COTS, even though it's beautifully presented, you probably won't get the full 5 points, because unless you've got a really good reason for having done the 3,500, we probably say, well, might only be worth 3 points really, because you're not tried hard enough to get the costs down. But principally, it's about the fact that you presented the information decent and understandable.
And not least, of course, you probably won't have got as many marks at the CDR if you're buying pre-formed everything. You haven't put the design.
Well, I think I'd ideally like to see, but remembering, you know, we've not been that clear in the rules, so you're not going to get huge marks deducted for this. I mean, certainly is the cost. This is manufactured items, and it actually says in here on the aircraft. I had noticed that subtlety myself before, but it's on the aircraft, so it actually your laptop or flight controller and things are not part of that, but it's the on-aircraft manufactured items, like motors, batteries, autopilots, you know, and actuators and things ought to be as COTS. I think it would be useful to then put in other material, well, stuff you bought. So that might be materials, and you know, something like a carbon fibre rod is, well, it will have been manufactured by someone. I presume you're going to do some work on it. So that to me wouldn't be COTS as such. That would be a material cost, and certainly things like fasteners. You know, again, somebody actually made them, but I mean, they'd still become material costs, not in the cost category.
No, back on the on-aircraft piece. So if it's too late,
Yeah.
now, you know, you could come with your Gucci set of snap-on tools. Fantastic. I don't want to see an adjustable spanner.
No.
Other than that, anything snap-on is probably quite good.
No, the only point where that comes in is when you're thinking about your business proposition, thinking about other things, not just your tools, your labor, processes, any operation time, that kind of thing. So it's in your business plan. So it's good to think about it, while not necessarily required to report.
Yeah. And it is. It's that context of what the mission is here. You're selling a product effectively that you want to be able to use in humanitarian conditions. So draw your own kind of conclusions out of it, but you probably want it to be low cost, easily transportable. The supportability elements of it should be as low cost, because you're potentially taking it to either third world countries that don't locally have a lot of money and a lot of capability, or it's into a disaster zone and there is no national grid and there is no supporting infrastructure and there's very few people there. So actually, the more self-contained it is, the better. So, and again, do you need it en masse? Are you going to flood this place with lots of these, or is it single use? Probably not a brilliant business case. So how you justify then, so if you do spend more costs on elements that you fit to the aircraft, or you buy in more tooling and stuff, actually, how does that work towards your business case? Equally, in things like CDR, if you're buying stuff that's pre-manufactured, is that as good? It may be. You do want to have it something that you can repair and replace manually in location. And so how that adapts, and that shows your innovation and your personal design and influence. So, up to you. But you've got to weigh that up, justify it, and what is the selling point you're getting at? Both from an engineering point of view and a business.
I mean, it's sort of an engineering tale. The reason that Model T Ford went all the way around the world and brought transport really to the world as a car was because it could be repaired by a blacksmith. Is that, you didn't need any sophisticated tools or anything to repair it. It's, traditional metalworking capability was good enough. And so, it didn't need a highly sophisticated repair system. That's a bit of a problem today, as a modern car is far from a Model T, and why, to some extent, it's limited in its areas of use.
Any other questions? Anybody online? The team is everything.
The trouble is we've changed the marking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And to be honest, I mean, nobody has. I mean, there's all to play for, because nobody's done a perfect flight demonstration event by a long way yet.
And we haven't had, 90% of everybody flying or anything like that. We've, quite a few have failed or have just got off the ground, not necessarily achieved the mission. So actually, there's quite a big margin of achievement that we go to. Some guys have just managed by the end of the competition to get it in the air. They've been fettling so much at the end. We've kind of helped them in it. The thing for us is we want to see you fly. We want you all to fly, and we want you all to fly well. But actually, sometimes the biggest rounds of applause have been the guys who've really, really struggled. Everything's been against them, not least probably time in their coursework. But in the end, they've got it to fly. And that sense of achievement, getting wheels off the ground, is fantastic. And they get the biggest round of applause. They don't get any prizes. But
If you look at the first year, we only got one team test flight. During that test flight, the wings fell off. Compared to last year, where I think we probably got about 70% of teams flying the mission fairly confidently. So we're trying to improve, make things more interesting, cheap, and also teams. down to communication. Judges there to help, there to help. Start come and ask this question. Stop.
It's a bit like in rugby, the television match official question from the ref, and he's going, is there any reason I can't award a try? Is where we're getting to. We're not trying to stop you flying. We're trying to get you to fly. But we want you to do it well.
Okay. Thanks a million, guys.
We've kind of a bit, but finish. Can we give a round of applause just to finish?
Spare the quiz.
Yeah,
There was a
well,
quiz,
used to-
but I think you asked all the questions we were going to ask you anyway. So
a lot of questions, which I'm glad about. I think last year we had less questions than
Yeah.
this time. That's good.
We'll make you a quiz
Thank
for the
you
event.
guys. Thanks for coming.